Let me take you back to the early 2000s, a fresh millennium, a time when frosted tips were in, dial-up was still screeching through our walls, and humanity stood starry-eyed at the edge of a digital frontier. We were high on the promise of technology. Mobile phones were shrinking.
And these handsets can send not only text, but take and send pictures as well.
The internet was expanding, and we'd already flung a few people to the moon just to prove that we could. Technology wasn't just cool, it was transforming how we lived, communicated, healed, and imagined the future. But with all that excitement came a side of existential dread. The more connected we became, the more we started to ask, what are we losing? What if we go too far? And that, believe it or not, is where Final Fantasy X comes in. Released in 2001, Final Fantasy X might take place in a fictional world called Spira, but the themes and fears of the real world are subtly seeping out of every corner of the map. It's a fantasy game, sure, with oversized swords, underwater football, and a character who somehow stores a teddy bear between her teeth. But beneath all that, it tells a story about a world that turned its back on technology, a society that, scared by its past, rejected machines in favour of religion, tradition, and spirituality. Spira is a hauntingly beautiful reflection of our own anxieties and contradictions, a tropical dreamscape built on ruins ruled by ritual and shadowed by a literal embodiment of the sins of the past. Something about this has stuck with me for over 20 years. It's not just the gameplay or the emotional gut punch of that scene at the lake, it's the world. Spira feels like nothing else in the Final Fantasy series, or any game I've played since. Where other entries swing between sci-fi cities and medieval castles, X occupies a unique space, something I like to call a post-apocalyptic paradise.
I want my journey to be full of laughter.
So sit back and relax as I take you on a journey to the past as we explore the devastatingly beautiful future known as Spira. When you think of Final Fantasy X, the first place that probably comes to mind is Besaid. It's the image Square Enix plastered across all of its promotional material, and for good reason too.
Enter the battle.
It's the perfect encapsulation of everything we just talked about, a true post-apocalyptic paradise. You begin your journey on white sandy beaches, surrounded by crystal clear waters that almost feel too perfect to be real. Then you move inland through lush, dense forests dotted with waterfalls and fiends until you pass ancient, crumbling ruins. They're a constant reminder of a past shaped by tragedy, death, and sin. It's extremely beautiful, but also melancholic. And that duality becomes the blueprint for the entire world of Spira. Besaid is our introduction, the tonal foundation for everything to come. Water especially plays a huge role in this game, and believe me, you're going to hear me talk a lot about water, but it's central to life in Spira. It's how people travel, how they live, how they entertain themselves. Water manages to make its way into every nook and cranny of this game. It's in every city, every wild space that you visit. And this design choice isn't just an aesthetic one. It's also technological. See, Final Fantasy X was one of the first games of the PlayStation 2, and it wanted you to know it.
Don't you give up on it. You put the head, the fear.
Gone were the days of the PlayStation 1's pre-rendered hand-painted backdrops. Beautiful as they were, they couldn't move. They couldn't breathe. They were static, frozen moments in time. Anything that did move, like the dropping of an item or an opening of a door, often looked like it didn't belong, almost like it had been digitally taped onto a beautiful painting. Final Fantasy X changed all of that. Now, the environments were alive. Water shimmered, trees swayed, light danced across the walls. Thanks to the power of the PS2, everything could be rendered in real time, integrated directly into the game's engine. And the results were stunning. This shift was more than just a tech upgrade. It was symbolic. In many ways, Final Fantasy X marks the end of an era. The transition from pre-rendered beauty to full 3D design was a farewell to the old way of doing things. While the series had always been about pushing boundaries, visually, musically, emotionally, this evolution raised a big question. How far is too far? Final Fantasy was now on a path of constant reinvention, chasing every new trend and every new tool. But in doing so, would it lose the very soul that made it special in the first place? Is it possible that by evolving too much, we'd end up just looking back on a simpler, more static past with kind of nostalgic mourning? All of that, the excitement, the fear, the quiet sadness, it's all present in Final Fantasy X. And Besaid is where that all begins. On the surface, Kilika might remind you of Besaid. It's got the tropical beach huts, crystal clear waters, the dense jungles. It looks like any other island paradise. But unlike Besaid, Kilika has just been bulldozed. Sin has come and gone, and in its wake, smouldering wreckages, mourning families, and the heavy silence of loss. It's here that the game stops gently hinting at danger and just shows you the reality of living in spirit. This is the cost of survival. Sin, the literal embodiment of fear, guilt, and punishment. A Godzilla-sized consequence for the society's past dependence on Machina, the advanced technology that once defined the world before it collapsed. According to the teachings of Yevon, Spira's dominant religion, sin exists as a divine punishment. The message? Technology equals sin. Stay humble, stay spiritual, and stay fearful.
I'm afraid that if I subscribed to something like internet, I would get hooked and I would never spend time with my family.
The people of Spira believe this. They live by it.
People played all day and let the Machina do the work. If you ask me, sins are punishment for letting things get out of hand.
At the center of that belief system are the Summoners, spiritual warriors trained to defeat sin in an elaborate ritual that brings about a temporary peace known as the calm.
Lady Yuna, are you going to bring us the calm?
But here's the catch. Sin always comes back. This endless cycle is known as Spira's spiral of death, and the Summoners are stuck in the middle of it, saviors destined to fail. Kilika introduces us to this cycle in a way that's both breathtaking and brutal. Our own party's summoner, Yuna, steps into the spotlight here, and it's clear she's not like everyone else. She doesn't wear the slick, modern, skin-revealing clothes you see in other characters. Instead, she's dressed in a traditional kimono, modest and elegant, a walking symbol of Yevon's ideals and a callback to classic Japanese aesthetics. She represents the game's theme of traditionalism, someone caught between the weight of the past and the horror of the present. But the moment that really cements Kilika in my memory, the moment that makes this game feel like something more, is the sending. After the destruction, the villagers gather at the ruined docks to mourn, and Yuna steps forward. As music swells, she begins a ritual dance on the water's surface, graceful, delicate, and serene. Particles of light swirl around her like fireflies, glimmering in the sunset. It's absolutely stunning. A masterclass in animation, art direction, and emotional timing. You could frame any second of this scene and hang it on your wall, it's that amazing. But it's also deeply tragic. Those glowing particles? They're the souls of the recently deceased. Yuna's dance isn't just for show, it's to guide those spirits to the far plane, which is Spira's version of the afterlife. If left unsent, those souls become fiends, twisted monsters that continue the cycle of death and destruction. It's beautiful, but also horrifying. It's peace, but it's grief. It's that juxtaposition of beauty and sadness in this scene that makes it the perfect case study to illustrate what makes Final Fantasy X so powerful. Square wasn't just trying to make a game, they were making cinema. And in scenes like this, you can feel the legacy of titles like Final Fantasy VII with its iconic cinematic opening being carried forward into a new generation. The PS2 was a leap forward in storytelling tools, and Square took full advantage, blending gameplay, narrative, and visuals in ways that few had done before. Kilika shows us that Final Fantasy X isn't just about fighting monsters and leveling up. It's about loss, ritual, belief, and the beauty we find in the face of despair. Our next stop is Luca, a city that hits you with a complete tonal shift from the sorrowful aftermath of Kilika. Gone are the smouldering ruins and funeral procedures. Instead, we're greeted by something rare in Spira: life. For a moment, it feels like we've stepped into a completely new world entirely. Luca is a symbol of hope, one of the last places in Spira where people can pretend, even briefly, that things are normal. It's vibrant, bustling, and surprisingly joyful. There are shops, laughter, and people shouting about Blitzball like it's the World Cup. And at the heart of it all, the Blitzball Stadium itself. Spira's one and only escape from its slow-burning apocalypse. It's more than a sports arena. It's a sacred distraction. Yuna reminds us that Luca isn't immune to Sin's attacks, but it's heavily protected by the Crusaders.
They protect the stadium?
Blitzball is really the only entertainment that we have. Spira's a little short on fun these days.
Of course, this is Final Fantasy X, so the joy doesn't last. No sooner does the Blitzball tournament end than chaos erupts. Fiends invade the city, and just like that, we're snapped back into reality. The transition is jarring, and purposefully so. It reminds us that in Spira, peace is always temporary. It's here where we meet the main antagonist Seymour, and more importantly, his mother, Anima.
Oh my god! What is that?
Now, I'm just gonna say it. Anima might be my favourite summon design in the entire Final Fantasy franchise. The series has always flirted with horror. I'm thinking about the scene in Final Fantasy VII where we first meet Genova. Very, very creepy. But Anima takes it to another level. She doesn't walk or fly. She erupts from the ground in a full-blown nightmare sequence, ushered in by the stunning full-motion video cutscenes that still hold up to this day. Her chained body, the grotesque second face, the way she seems both in agony and control, it's pure horror elegance. Anima doesn't just defeat the fiends our party struggle with, she obliterates them. With one grotesque, rotting blink, she sends them into oblivion. Up until now, Yuna's been our shining beacon. The one summoner we've met, the one with divine power and grace. But now Seymour rolls up with his literal hellspawn and makes it very, very clear. We're not the strongest ones here. Not even close. It's hypnotic, admirable, terrifying. The final image of Anima's bleeding eye staring down the last of the fiends while Seymour stands calmly behind her, looking like he's just finished his morning It's a moment that's been burned into my brain. It's one of the most iconic cutscenes in the franchise's history. The stakes are rising, the power scale just shifted, and we now understand something crucial. There are forces in Spira that go far beyond what we've seen so far, and not all of them are on our side. After the chaos and spectacle of Luca, the game wisely slows things down as we step onto the Mihen Highroad. This stretch of land marks a rare moment of calm in our journey, a much needed breather. Gone are the packed crowds and exploding fiends. Instead, we're greeted by long, open fields, ruined outposts, and distant coastline views that stretch endlessly into the horizon. Much like previous areas we've visited, ancient ruins litter the highroad, quiet echoes of Spira's violent past. But here, they feel more like historical landmarks, monuments to a world still healing. As we reach our next destination, the sun begins to set, painting the landscape in warm golds and oranges. It's a striking visual callback to the Kilika sunset, but where that one was drenched in sorrow and mourning, this one feels still, peaceful.
Whoa. Check it out. That sunset was different from the one I saw in Kilika. It was quiet, almost gentle.
For just a moment, it's like time stops and we're able to relax. This is where Final Fantasy X really flexes its visual storytelling. The beauty of Spira isn't just in its landscapes, it's in what those landscapes say. Okay, hear me out because this might sound crazy. Water is a recurring theme throughout the game, and like water itself, it's constantly shifting. It can be serene, peaceful, reflective, but also violent, destructive, and terrifying.
Get in!
It flows through every location, every mood, every emotion. In Mihen, the ocean below us is calm and expansive, a metaphor for the long journey still ahead. It's a rare moment of clarity, a deep breath before the plunge. And plunge we do. As we enter the Mushroom Rock Road, the tension begins to creep back in. The sun is hiding from us and the mood has changed. The rocky cliffs and twisted terrain reflect the unease building in the story. It's here that we witness one of the most tragic and brutal moments in the entire game, a full-scale military operation to restrain sin. Thousands of Crusaders gather in a desperate, coordinated attack to destroy the beast once and for all, or at least deter it. They bring everything, machina, strategy, sheer numbers, but none of it matters. Sin doesn't just win, it annihilates. In a matter of minutes, the battlefield is reduced to silence and smoke. It's a devastating reminder of just how hopeless this fight really is. In the aftermath, Tidus throws himself into the ocean to chase after Sin. No plan, no backup, just raw emotion and desperation. The clear waters of the Mihen Highroad are now gone, and have been replaced by the dark, churning depths. It's another sharp contrast, a visual metaphor for how quickly peace in Spira can dissolve into chaos. Despair is at an all-time high. And yet, Final Fantasy knows how to balance the weight. The game never lingers too long in one emotional state. Just as sorrow begins to suffocate us, the story then shifts gears. It brings us humour, lightness, and moments of connection.
Hey, you two, hurry up.
She's awfully cheerful.
In dark times, she must be. She must shine bright.
Huh?
Now are dark times. Yuna tries hard.
We should help her then.
If we worry, she tries harder. Do not frown.
Don't worry, be happy.
Kimahri try too.
Smile, let me see.
It never feels jarring, just fluid, like water. This game has a lot of water. The ebb and flow is what keeps the game emotionally resonant. It's a journey that reflects life, beautiful and terrifying, joyful and tragic, always moving forward, always changing, and somehow always managing to keep us afloat. Let's move on now to our next major location, the Moonflow. It's a sprawling, marshy dreamscape covered in mist, glowing with soft pinks and greens from the floating lilies that drift lazily across its swampy waters. It's like stepping into a watercolour painting. Here, our party slows down for a moment of reflection. Tidus, charmed by the scenery, casually suggests that they come back someday, after they defeat Sin.
Then, once we beat Sin, we're coming back.
It's a sweet, innocent moment, but painfully naive, because at this point, Tidus still doesn't know the cost of victory. He doesn't know that, for Yuna, defeating Sin means sacrificing her own life. She won't be coming back to this place, or anywhere in Spira. This information isn't made clear to the player just yet, which makes the moment even more impactful in hindsight. Once the truth comes out, scenes like this hit harder. You've realised that what seemed like a peaceful pause is actually a quiet farewell. The brilliance of Final Fantasy X is how it gives us two lenses to view Spira. We have Tidus's wide-eyed wonder and Yuna's quiet grief. For Tidus, and by extension the player, everything is beautiful, mysterious and new, but for Yuna, this world isn't something she's discovering. It's something she's saying goodbye to. And somehow, both of these emotional truths coexist in the same space. That sort of emotional duality is a testament to the design genius behind this game. The world of Spira doesn't just look beautiful. It feels beautiful, and haunting and tragic all at the same time. The developers knew exactly how to make each location carry weight, not just in the story, but in the players' hearts. But of course, this is still a Final Fantasy game, so the profound moments are always balanced with something a little bit strange.
Rides the Shoopaf?
As we float across the river on our noble Shoopaf steed, we pass over the sunken ruins of an ancient city. Another striking visual reminder that, in Spira, even the most beautiful places are built atop forgotten tragedy. There's always something lurking just beneath the surface. Sometimes it's history, sometimes it's sorrow, sometimes it's just a Shoopaf. Next, we make a brief but memorable pit stop in Guadosalam, the giant tree city nestled somewhere between a magical swamp and a literal thunderstorm wasteland. Visually striking, but if you're trying to make sense of how this place logically connects to the world around it, good luck. One of the quirks of Final Fantasy X is that we almost never see Spira from a bird's eye view. The camera stays glued behind Tidus's tight little round twink butt and rarely breaks that perspective. Aside from a few sweeping cutscenes and the eventual airship map, we're left to piece together the geography of Spira ourselves. So when you step out of Guadosalam's ethereal tree caverns and then suddenly you're in an apocalyptic lightning field, it's kind of a head scratcher. In a game that usually nails seamless transitions and immersive world building, this one does feel a little bit disjointed. Not a deal breaker, but maybe the one tiny crack in an otherwise flawless world. But back to Guadosalam. This is the home of the Guado, a race that feels like Spira's take on high fantasy elves. They're tall, elegant, vaguely unsettling, and come with a permanent vibe of, we're better than you. There's a sense of wealth and prestige in Guadosalam. Unlike other towns in Spira, the water here isn't essential to survival or for travel. It's purely ornamental. The decorative flowing fountains suggest a society that's elevated above necessity. Guadosalam is also home to one of the game's most important and visually stunning locations, the Far Plane. This is where we get a glimpse of Final Fantasy X's version of the afterlife, and it's another jaw-dropping moment. With light, floating flowers, glimmering souls, it's truly breathtaking. Square's team pulls no punches here, delivering another masterclass in emotional storytelling through visuals alone. You can feel the reverence in the air. The Far Plane isn't just a set piece, it's a spiritual dreamscape. It's moments like this that really highlight Square's artistry. They don't just build locations, they build emotion into locations. So we touched on this location earlier, but now let's properly dive into the Thunderlands, Spira's stormy, eternally electrified no man's land. It's bleak, lifeless, and cloaked in a heavy atmosphere that feels like even the air itself is exhausted. You can practically feel the static in your bones. So, naturally, the soundtrack that accompanies this desolate landscape is... Wait, what? Yeah, the music here is surprisingly chirpy. A plucky little tune with twinkly synths and a steady, optimistic rhythm. At first it feels like a tonal mismatch. Every other track in Final Fantasy X is so meticulously aligned with the environment's mood. Kilika's haunting serenity, Besaid's tropical calm. So, what gives? Well, it's actually kinda genius. The Thunderplains theme isn't there to reflect the environment, it reflects the characters. It's the musical embodiment of the group's philosophy: smile through the storm, keep moving forward no matter how dark things get. I like to think this is the song playing in Yuna's head as she trudges through this electrical wasteland, shielding Tidus from the truth of her fate and trying desperately to carry the light for all of them. It's bittersweet optimism at its finest. And while we're on the subject of music, let's talk about the music, because Final Fantasy X doesn't just have a good soundtrack, it has a generation-defining one. Square has always been at the forefront of pushing what video game music can be, writing emotional epics out of whatever hardware they were given. Final Fantasy VII gave us the orchestral intensity of One Winged Angel on a PlayStation 1 disc, so of course when it came to writing the music for Final Fantasy X, they came ready to raise the bar again. There's Yuna's theme, delicate, romantic, and deeply human. It sounds like someone trying to hold on to hope with both hands. It captures her essence perfectly. And of course, there's a personal favourite of mine, Otherworld, which is the final boss theme. It kicks in with raging heavy metal guitars and throws you headfirst into a nu metal fever dream, which was a very, very popular genre at the time of this game's release. It's wild, it's chaotic. It almost sounds like if Slipknot had an existential crisis in a PS2 RPG. And I mean that in the best possible way. It's completely different from anything else in the series, and that's what makes it unforgettable. Honestly, I could go on forever. There's Via Purifico, with its eerie, dreamlike quality.
Lady Yuna, forgive me.
Auron's theme, which oozes strength and mystery. Even Tidus' theme hits that perfect mix of melancholy and boyish energy that defines his entire arc. Every track in this game has a purpose. It doesn't just exist in the background. It deepens your understanding of Spira. It makes the world feel alive. So yeah, I hope you listen to the Thunderplains track now and see it more as a metaphor rather than trying to fit the environment around it, because honestly I think it's kind of genius. Once we make our way through the relentless storm of the Thunderplains, we are rewarded with one of the most visually breathtaking locations in the entire game. And that is Lake Macalania. Much like Besaid, it's one of those iconic spots that instantly comes to mind when you think of this game. It's a frozen, crystalline forest, bathed entirely of shifting shades of blues and greens, where everything glistens and shimmers like it's been dipped in starlight. You don't just walk through this place, you glide. Winding along tree branches and otherworldly paths, the whole area feels deeply spiritual, almost as if we've wandered into the sacred heart of Spirit itself. Eventually, we arrive at the Macalania temple, and this is where the game's tension begins to rise in a slow, deliberate climb. The approach alone is so iconic. You've got this narrow, icy pathway stretching over a frozen void with no handrails, no safety nets, just the cold beneath your feet and the looming temple ahead. Unlike the temples we've visited before, which are often bustling with people or at least accessible, this one feels remote, isolated, like only those who are truly worthy could ever reach it. And we've reached it. But now, the pilgrimage forever changes. The moment our party decides to attempt to assassinate Maester Seymour, everything shifts. What was once a holy journey now becomes a rebellion. The path was already difficult, and now we're walking it as enemies of the very institution that claimed to protect Spira. And that's what makes this moment so powerful. It's the first time Yuna stops blindly following what's expected of her, and instead chooses to do what she believes is right, for herself and for Spira. And yes, here comes another water metaphor, but stay with me here. Up until now, Yuna's been like water, you know? Fluid, obedient, quietly powerful, but always moving in the same direction set by others. But here, surrounded by ice, she becomes solid, unmovable. Ice doesn't behave the way water is supposed to behave. It's cold, sharp, and can withstand immense pressure, and in this moment, so can she. Whether intentional or not, it's another stunning way the game uses the environments to mirror the character's development. The pilgrimage is no longer just a sacred tradition, it's evolving, and then, quite literally, the ground breaks beneath us. We fall through the ice, crashing down into an unknown forbidden place far off the intended path, a place where we were never meant to see. The game doesn't just tell you things are changing, it makes you feel it, and somehow, it's only going to get more intense from here. That feeling of loneliness and isolation comes rushing back as we once again wake up surrounded by water. It's a clear callback to the beginning of our journey when we first opened our eyes in Besaid, but this time everything feels different. There's no warm welcome, no Waka tossing blitzballs in our face, no aurochs laughing in the distance, no lush palm trees, just silence and a lot of sand. The contrast to Macalania couldn't be more jarring. We've gone from glowing ice forest to endless desert. And this shift in setting is more than just visual. It's kinda symbolic. It's a sign that we've strayed far off the beaten path. We're not just wandering anymore, we're truly lost. Eventually, we regroup with the others, but Yuna is nowhere to be found. Riku leads us towards the nearby Al Bhed home, promising safety, but it's clear that things are only going to get harder from here on out. While we're in the territory, it feels like the right time to talk about the Al Bhed. I've always loved their whole aesthetic, the goggles, harnesses, slightly chaotic fashion choices. It's kind of like BDSM meets Desert Survivor, and it just works, it's very cool. But what's even more interesting than their look is how the rest of Spira treats them. The Al Bhed are outcast, shunned by the Yevonite majority, not because they're evil or dangerous, but because they question things. They reject the teachings of Yevon. They use Machina freely, and they refuse to bow to a system that provides no real answers. And here's the kicker, they're right. The Al Bhed aren't the problem, they're just the easiest ones to blame. And this is where the game subtly mirrors our own world. I don't want to get too political here, but it's hard not to notice the parallels. Throughout history, and especially in the early 2000s, governments and societies have often turned to scapegoating vulnerable groups rather than confronting the real issues.
I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers.
It's a tactic. Redirect fear, blame the other, and keep the system intact. The way the Al Bhed are treated in Spira, it's a reflection of that exact dynamic. It's subtle, it's smart, and it's another example of Final Fantasy X using its world and story to comment on something much bigger than itself. We're going to skip ahead a bit in the story and head to our next notable location, which is Bevelle, and things kick off with one of the most intense and cinematic moments in the game. A high-speed rail grind straight into the capital city as we rush to save Yuna from being forcibly married to the guy she literally tried to murder a few days ago. Yeah, I told you this game goes off the rails, I was not joking. Bevelle oozes grandeur. It's the cultural and religious powerhouse of Spira, basically the Vatican City of this world. And it looks the part. Towering architecture, ornate symbolism, and glistening waterways all speak to a society drenched in wealth and power. But, ironically, for a city so central to Spira, we barely get to explore it. Outside of a few sterile corridors, the Cloister of Trials, and the wedding venue thingy, the rest of Bevelle remains a mystery. It's a bit of a letdown considering how jaw-dropping the place looks during the cinematic entrance, but it is what it is. Much like Guadosalam, Bevelle doesn't use water as a necessity. It uses it as decoration. The Church of Yevon is so high and mighty that it's above relying on natural resources like everyone else. Here, water becomes a symbol of prestige rather than survival. Another layer of elitism wrapped in divine aesthetics. Now, let's talk about the wedding scene. On the surface, it checks all the boxes of a classic damsel in distress trope. Heroine captured, forced into a political marriage, guardians racing to save her life, but Final Fantasy X flips the script a bit. Yes, the party shows up, but it's Yuna who ultimately saves herself. In a stunning moment of defiance, she steps off the edge of the floating wedding platform, and before we can even process what's happening, she calls upon Valfor, her first Aeon, to catch her mid-fall. It's such a powerful moment. She doesn't just escape, she reclaims her agency. And the choice of Valfor isn't random. It's the first Aeon she earned back in Besaid, the very beginning of the journey. The callback is subtle but meaningful. It shows that, while Yuna has changed and grown, her core hasn't wavered. She's still the same Yuna, just stronger, braver, and more willing to fight for what she believes in. I actually go into much more detail about this in my Final Fantasy X Challenge Run series. It's a bit of fun, you should check it out at the end of this video. I'll put a link in the description below. But back to Bevelle. Once reunited, the group moves into the Bevelle Cloister of Trials, which is, ironically, absolutely riddled with machina. It's the most blatant example of Yevon's hypocrisy so far. The church, which demonized the use of machina for centuries, turns out to be using it secretly all along. The illusion is crumbling fast. The narrative veil is lifting. Yuna and her guardians are sentenced to death.
Death to all of them.
Not because they've done anything wrong, but because they've exposed the truth. We're not criminals, we're threats to the status quo. And just to twist the knife in even more, it turns out the church knows Seymour murdered his own father. They know he's unhinged, and they simply don't care. The party barely manages to escape with their lives, and from here on out, we are no longer on a pilgrimage of peace. We've been officially branded as fugitives, outlaws, and rebels of Yevon. We find ourselves back where it all fell apart, the place where the pilgrimage was last on track before everything changed, Macalania. But now, after all that's happened, we return to this crystal forest with a new set of eyes. The stakes are much higher, the truth has been exposed, and the weight of the world is on Yuna's shoulders. It's here where we get one of the most iconic scenes in the game, where Yuna finally breaks. I go into more depth about Yuna and Tidus' connection in my Challenge Run series, so I'll keep the focus here on the aesthetics and the symbolic power of this scene. It begins with Yuna, submerged in the lake's glowing ethereal waters, but as we know, in this game, water is never just water. Yuna being fully immersed is a visual metaphor for how deeply overwhelmed she is. The weight she's been carrying for the entire journey, knowing she's walking towards her own death, finally becomes too much. For the first time, she breaks. And this moment is important because it's not just sadness, it's a release. The facade of strength she's worn for the sake of others and for Spira and her guardians, it all finally drops. She's allowed to be vulnerable, human. But she's not alone. She's surrounded by the water, the life force of Spira. This scene is dressed in swirling fireflies, soft sparkles, and the gentle flow of glowing blue water. There's something deeply sacred about this place. It feels like a safe haven, a pocket of peace where she's allowed to feel everything without judgment. Here, she's protected, not by her guardians, but by the world itself. It's a reminder to Yuna that Spira is on her side. The water that surrounds her is there to protect her. It's a breathtaking sequence that captures so much without needing to say a word. Emotion, connection, and sacrifice are all woven into the visuals, and the fact that this takes place in Macalania, one of the most stunning locations in the game, makes it even more powerful. After the emotional weight of Macalania, the political chaos of Bevelle, and everything else that's been thrown at our party, we step into the Calmlands, a place that really lives up to its name. It's quiet here, isolated, vast, and pretty empty. But this place also carries a heavy silence, the kind that settles after trauma. The Calmlands aren't peaceful because Spirit is safe. They're peaceful because there's nothing left. No bustling villages, no rivers, no ocean, no water. Just wide open plains, empty and scarred. The craters and ruins scattered across the landscapes are remnants of the old war between summoners and sin, a painful reminder that Spira's calm is always temporary. The land hasn't been flattened by time, but by violence. And in a way, that matches where we are in the story. The party is burned out. The chaos has crescendoed and now we're in the numb stage, the quiet after the storm. It's lonely, but for once, we welcome it. We want to be left alone. There's one area in particular of the Calmlands I'd like to talk about, and that's the Monster Arena. This place is weird. Tucked into a corner of this vast expanse is a strange little area that totally clashes with the surrounding environment. A giant mechanical dragon head twitches and moves in a way that feels completely off and janky. It's really stiff and almost feels like it's a leftover asset from another project. It's bizarre, but I think that's the point. The music here is also of a lower quality compared to the rest of the game. It almost feels compressed, like it was taken straight from a PS1 era game, and I believe it was intentional. This whole area feels like a deliberate callback to the older generation of Final Fantasy games, a nod to the series' history. As previously mentioned, back in the PS1 days, anytime something in the environment was animated, it stood out like a sore thumb. It didn't quite blend in, and you knew it was something that you could interact with. The Monster Arena captures that feeling perfectly. It's a little off, a little nostalgic, and strangely charming because of it, but they haven't forgotten their roots. And here, in the middle of this desolate expanse between plot twists and emotional wreckage, they slip in a quiet tribute to the games that paved the way. It's the start of a new millennium, and new technology is always forming, but let's not forget the triumphs and tribulations of the 1900s. Mount Gagazet marks the next brutal phase of the pilgrimage. This isn't the shimmering beauty of the Macalania woods. This is a frozen gauntlet of blizzards, steep peaks, and bone-chilling winds. The snow here doesn't sparkle like in Macalania. Instead, it swallows. It's harsh, suffocating, and unforgiving. Almost a physical manifestation of the emotional weight the party is carrying as they inch closer and closer to their final location, Zanarkand. Gagazet is home to the Ronso, one of the most distinctive races in Spira. Towering, muscular, covered in fur, and yes, they are blue. They're part feline, part lion, part beast, and totally unique in the world of Final Fantasy. Visually, they stand apart from the rest of Spira's inhabitants, and their culture reflects that difference. They're ferocious, noble, and deeply spiritual, with an unwavering loyalty to tradition and the land that they protect. Their connection to Gagazet runs deep. It's not just their home, it's a sacred place, a proving ground, a graveyard of summoners' pasts. Their designs are bold, unexpected, and oozing epicness. Say what you want in the comments, call me a fairy, I'll take it, but you cannot deny that Square got very creative here, and they look awesome. Gagazet itself is a true test, and I don't just mean mechanically in terms of the gameplay difficulty, because this is a very, very tough area, but I mean narratively. It's where the pilgrimage stops being a journey and becomes a final march. The party is physically and emotionally worn down, but there's no turning back now. Every step up this mountain feels like it's fighting against fate itself. And, as we climb, the stakes rise with us. Zanarkand is just ahead, the fabled city Tidus once called home, now a place of ghosts and endings.
A city dead for 1,000 years. A city I had to see with my own eyes. The end of Yuna's journey. the last chapter in my story.
Up until this point, Tidus has been able to disconnect, at least a little bit, from the death and despair that surrounds him. This world was never really his. He was dropped into it, uninvited, and for all he knew, maybe it was just a dream. That detachment allowed him to question Spira's traditions, to challenge its fatalism. He's not bound by the beliefs or fears that hold everyone else down, and that perspective is ultimately what saves the world. A rejection of blind tradition, not technology. But Zanarkand is different. Zanarkand is real to him. This was his home, a once dazzling, vibrant metropolis full of lights, people, and life, but now it's all gone. As we reach the peak of the mountain, we see that Zanarkand has been reduced to dust and silence. Its ruins are haunting and vast, stretching out into a lifeless desert. The terrain is dry, empty, cold, not a drop of water in sight. This once proud city is now nothing but a graveyard of memories. This moment marks a climax in Tidus' emotional journey. The fantasy is gone, the dream is ending, and the weight of Spira's suffering finally hits him. The detachment is shattered. When we finally enter the ruins, the world shifts to nighttime. Everything is cloaked in darkness. The fireflies, once beautiful and almost whimsical in places like Kilika or the Moonflow, are now suffocating. They don't dance here, they swarm. It's overwhelming, a chilling representation of Spira's endless cycle of death. This is the spiral made manifest. And then, the moment we've been waiting for, the opening cutscene. Now replayed with full context. The journey, the sacrifice, the heartbreak, it all hits differently now. The soft flames in the middle of the group offer the tiniest flicker of hope, a quiet defiance against everything that's been lost. Despite it all, they're still here, still alive, and still moving forward. What felt cryptic at the start of the game now feels heavy with meaning. When Tidus says,
"This may be our last chance,"
we finally understand. It's not just about the fight ahead, it's about everything they've endured to get here. This really is the final hurdle, and there's no going back now. And that brings us to the end of what there is to discover in Spira. From here, the story shifts into something much more abstract. We dive into Sin, then inside the final Aeon, and eventually face off against Yevon on a giant floating sword. It's surreal, symbolic, and powerful, but by that point, we've left the grounded reality of Spira behind. So I won't go too in deep about the final stretch here. Because really, the heart of the experience is Spira, and that's what I'm trying to get at in this video. It's a living, breathing world crafted with such care, such artistry, that it stays with you long after the credits roll. I hope this video has helped you see just how much depth there is in every detail, how nothing is wasted, how everything is layered with meaning and emotion. I know some of it might sound like overly romanticized fluff, just dreamy symbolism and pseudo-poetic nonsense, but to me, it's magic. If the zodiac sign Cancer were a world, it would be Spira. Full of sorrow, sacrifice, and yes, beneath the melancholy lies profound beauty, intuition, vulnerability, and strength. There's nothing quite like it. Square truly peaked here. Sure, it checks all the classic video game boxes. It's got the grassy plains, the deserts, the ice levels, tropical beaches, but what sets Spira apart is the soul behind every location. The history, the ruins, the fireflies, the ridiculous early 2000s NPC fashion. Everything ties together to create a world that is uniquely itself. Cohesive, surreal, and above all, unforgettable. And of course, there's the water, the ever-present symbol that follows you from beginning to end. Water is life. It flows through every chapter of this journey, quietly guiding you, comforting you, reminding you that in a world obsessed with the spiral of death, there is also a spiral of life. The year is 2025, and the world has changed so much since 2001. But Spira remains the same every time we go back. There will never be a world quite as beautiful as Spira. And there may never be a game quite as extraordinary as Final Fantasy X. Hey guys, Jam from the future here. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. It really helps the algorithm and lets me know that you guys enjoy this sort of content. This is something a bit different for this channel and I wanted to try push myself into doing something a bit more serious. So if you like this sort of deep dive content, then I can definitely do more of it. But yeah, just let me know in the comments below if that's something you'd be interested in. I had a lot of fun doing this and it took a lot of time, but it was worth it. I was feeling a bit stuck with this channel and this was something that I had in mind for a while, so I just wanted to take my time with it and do it some justice. So I hope that that resonates with you guys and I hope you learned something and I hope you got something out of this experience. Yeah. Shout out to my Jamly members Jury Lynn, Francis Coulon, Fiku Jez, Secundes666 and a super duper thank you to my super jams Alexander Lazilla and N. Thank you guys again so much for watching. My name's been Jamsack. See you guys next time.